Incredible moment. Dying police dog hugs. His handler, vet, reveals shocking discovery that changes everything. Jake Thompson stood in the dimly lit clinic, the familiar smells of antiseptic and animal fur swirling around him like a heavy fog. As he wrinkled his brow and fought back a lump in his throat, Max let out a soft whimper, resting his weary head against Jake's leg. It was a bittersweet moment. The loyal police dog, once full of exuberance, now lay frail, a shadow of the partner Jake had known for years. My partner. My friend. Jake's mind raced, brimming with an overwhelming sense of desperation and anguish. Max was dying, and the reality crushed him like a weight he could no longer bear. The joy of his family playing outside seemed to mock him, a reminder that life continued to press forward while his heart shattered in slow motion. Every bark he'd heard, every tail wag he'd received, now felt like a ticking clock counting down to the inevitable. Could he shield Anna and the kids from this gnawing pain, or would the betrayal of their beloved Max's health break them all? He hesitated. How could he bear their sorrow on top of his own? Each time his thoughts turned to Max, emotions twisted within him. What if he couldn't protect him too? Just as he teetered on the edge of acceptance, Dr. Emily Carter stepped into the room with a troubled look on her face. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air. A shiver ran down his spine. She had discovered something unexpected. Max's cancer might be related to the evidence we collected from that drug bust last year. Jake's stomach dropped. He felt as if the room had been spun on its axis. Confusion merged with anger, a twist of fate that implicated the very department he had pledged his life to. His loyalty flipped like a light switch, illuminating the darkest corners of anguish. On one side lay Max, suffering and fighting to stay alive against an enemy he couldn't see. On the other, a system that might have betrayed him. Part of Jake's world now felt unbearably tainted. Could a victory for Max cost him his career, his family's safety? What kind of officer would he be if he let the fear of losing everything silence him? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Pressure bubbled within him as he mulled over the choices ahead. He could let this slide, ignore the evidence, and protect the department's reputation. Or he could pursue the truth, risking everything, including the fragile equilibrium he'd built with Anna and their children. With every second, Max looked to him, his eyes filled with trust and loyalty, begging for his protection. That connection, their bond, forged in the fires of countless challenges, compelled Jake closer to a precipice he didn't know he was standing on. The stakes were higher than ever, and the path ahead blurred as Jake wrestled with the question that now haunted his every move. What did it truly mean to serve and protect, especially when it was someone he loved? Amid the unnerving silence, the reality closed in around Jake, each breath he took echoing with weighty decisions. Every moment felt more desperate than the last, and just when clarity seemed within reach, a new harrowing choice loomed on the horizon, one that threatened to unravel everything. Jake felt the weight of the world pressing down on him, 1,000 voices screaming at him from every corner of his mind. The path had never been clear, but now it shimmered with uncertainty like a mirage blurring his vision. Trust in his department had been steadfast, but trust in the system was eroding with each moment that passed. With every fleeting glance down at Max, who remained tethered to him by an invisible bond of loyalty, the resolve to confront this reality began to crystallize. Dr. Carter's revelation gnawed at him. What if the very drugs they seized during that notorious bust had contaminated Max? Questions began to spiral. Had the department overlooked something critical? Was this negligence or a consequence of a deeper, darker web of corruption he hadn't considered? He could lose Max, his best friend, his partner. But if he chose to remain silent, he could also lose his integrity, and, ultimately, more than he could bear. The harsh fluorescent lights of the vet's clinic cast shadows that lengthened and shifted, drawing gruesome figures that danced across the walls of Jake's mind. He thought of his family. Anna's comforting smile now felt distant. Their children's innocent laughter echoed eerily and stung like betrayal in his heart. How could he shatter that happiness by dragging them into his professional chaos? Yet, could he truly live with himself knowing Max might die not from cancer, but from systemic failures he could have exposed? He took a step back, closing his eyes to tap into that inner well of strength he'd relied upon during countless perilous missions. A police officer's duty was to protect. But from what? The realization hit him like a jolt. This wasn't just about Max's health anymore. It was about exposing a flaw in a system that was capable of inflicting harm, not just on the animals they loved, but on the community they served. Fueled by an emerging sense of purpose, Jake's thoughts rallied. He visualized the possibility of change, the potential to confront the powerful figures behind the veil of corruption among the ranks, of being an agent of change for Max, for his family, for every officer who relied on their canine companions. What he didn't know about himself was now coming to the surface. An unyielding resilience was igniting. "I need evidence," he muttered under his breath, a whisper meant only for himself. Carefully considered, each heartbeat resonated with growing determination. He would retain the loyalty to Max while digging into the dirt of the past drug bust, seeking out anyone who could corroborate the carelessness that led to this situation. The idea unfurled in his mind like the wings of an eagle taking flight. He could amalgamate his role as a protector with the truth-seeker he was becoming. However, the prospect of confronting his own department was like swinging a hammer against a glass wall. What if they dismissed him? Would they retaliate? Anxiety flooded him, but washing over it was the liberating tide of necessity. He wouldn't just be an officer. He would evolve into a whistleblower, standing up not just for Max, but for a cause that embraced so many silent voices. Jake paused, grounding himself in the reality he faced. The clock was ticking relentlessly, reminding him of Max's dire state. He felt the crossroads loom, an inevitable confrontation leading to revelations and risks he had yet to fully comprehend. As he left the clinic, his heart pounding with the weight of his decisions, he understood one thing. The moment had come to face not only the demons within the department, but to embrace the truth of what being a protector truly meant. If he failed to act, he would never forgive himself. That searing resolution transformed into a determination that burned in his belly, a blazing thread of purpose guiding him deeper into a tangled web of deception, where allies and enemies might be indistinguishable. What Jake didn't realize was that the evidence he sought would bring forth unanticipated consequences, forcing him into an unforeseen alliance that would set the stage for one of the most shocking chapters of his life yet. Jake stepped into the dim light of the hallway, his breath visible in the air as he tried to find clarity in the storm swirling in his mind. Each step felt like a pilgrimage toward an unknown fate. His determination swelled alongside the fear of loss that clawed at him. Max's well-being consumed his thoughts, the urgency of his mission transforming every ordinary sound into a reminder of what was at stake. The fluorescent buzz of the clinic faded as he emerged outside, the cool air biting at his skin, invigorating and unsettling all at once. He needed a plan, a tangible strategy to find the truth without drawing undue attention to himself or risking everything he had built in his career. The fear of retribution gnawed at him, but it was the thought of Max suffering in silence that spurred him onward. His mind raced as he navigated the half-lit streets back to his department, the weight of his newfound resolve sinking in deeply. Who could he trust? His closest partner, Rick, was committed to the same ideals, the well-being of the dogs they worked with. But was he ready to risk their friendship? Jake considered their shared laughs and late-night strategizing sessions. Would unveiling this sinister side of their department fracture the bond they had built? He took a detour to the coffee shop where they had frequently met, the smell of freshly brewed coffee softening the hard edges of anxiety that threatened to overwhelm him. As he waited for his drink, he observed the familiar faces around him. Officers sharing stories, betraying no signs of the undercurrents of dysfunction and deception lurking just beneath the surface of the department. Jake's instinct kicked in, a voice inside urging him to untangle this mess without losing sight of the trust that bound them together. His thoughts meandered back to the department's most recent bust. Unraveling the details felt like trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. Jake unpacked his memories, searching for distinctions or anomalies he had dismissed earlier. Something in the transaction had triggered his gut instinct, but failed to make his radar until now. A transaction that felt rushed. Something wasn't right. With the steaming cup in hand, Jake found a quiet table in the back, consciously choosing to remain out of sight. His fingers tapped anxiously against the ceramic, spurring him to reach out. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts. If he could find any of the officers involved in the bust willing to talk, they could shed light on the discrepancies he sensed, helping him connect the dots leading to accountability. Before he could overthink the decision, he dialed Rick. As the line rang, doubt trickled in. Would Rick support him in this? Would he look at Jake differently if he exposed the department's flaws? The thought was suffocating. Suddenly, Rick's voice broke through, grounding him in reality. "Jake, what's up? You sound off." Swallowing his fear, Jake recounted the urgency of Max's situation, weaving in the suspicion that linked the department to it. The tension in the silence that followed felt heavy, but Rick eventually spoke, his tone steady. "I've had my doubts too. We need to dig deeper. Together." With newfound clarity, Jake sensed a partnership forged in a shared commitment. They needed to strategize in ways that respected their boundaries while confronting growing concerns about the system they had vowed to uphold. But as they broke the conversation, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was embarking on a steep descent into uncharted territory. Little did he know, new alliances would test his resolve in ways he never saw coming, leading him to an unexpected confrontation that would shake the foundations of all he believed in. What awaited him on the other side of this beckoning darkness would demand not only strength, but also a moral clarity that would forever alter his definition of loyalty, putting everyone he loved at risk. As the chapters of his life began to turn, Jake stood on the brink of revelation, teetering, while fate whispered its secrets into the restless night. Jake's pulse quickened as he walked back to the department, arms tight against the cold, thoughts swirling dangerously. With each footfall, he pondered the magnitude of what lay ahead. Rick's acceptance invigorated him, yet the uncertainty of their investigation gnawed at his resolve. Together, they would shine a light on the hidden corners of their work. But what if that light illuminated something far darker than they could handle? Entering the familiar precinct, Jake felt the usual rhythm of daily life unfold, constables bustling about, the phone ringing incessantly. Each sound further cemented the duality of his existence. The mundane obligations of his role clashed with the pressing need to expose the truth. The walls of the precinct seemed closed and unyielding, with the weight of unspoken secrets heavy in the air. Head down, he made his way to his desk, glancing at Rick on the other side of the room. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken agreement passing between them. Today marked the beginning of a covert operation. Every piece of information they uncovered would need careful collection and interpretation. They couldn't afford to rush. Lives, including Max's, depended on their precision. Jake took a seat and opened his laptop, its screen illuminating his furrowed brow. He delved into the department's records from the recent bust, recalling faces, notes, and strange behaviors he had witnessed. The more he reviewed the details, the more isolated he felt, trapped between loyalty to his colleagues and the undeniable duty to protect the vulnerable, especially Max. Hours ticked by, the steady noise of the department humdrum surrounding him as he immersed himself in investigation mode. His eyes strained at the documents. He found clues embedded in inconsistencies, like breadcrumbs leading towards deeper anxiety. Lines of dialogue from officers hinted at undisclosed motives and a network beyond their department, holes in the fabric of authority that could unravel everything. A decision loomed near as Jake pondered the possibility of connecting with officers beyond his immediate circle. While the idea both thrilled and terrified him, intertwining with those who might carry the same burdens he bore, He deduced it was a necessary risk. The boldest course of action often yielded the most profound results. With meticulous effort, he crafted a list, a group of officers he deemed possibly trustworthy. He would contact them one by one, carefully gauging their reactions, their insights. Despite the tension rising within, there came a moment of resolve as he prepared to reach out to Officer Lee, a seasoned officer known for his integrity. A beacon amid the chaos. Dialing Lee's number, he felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down harder than ever. If he could convince Lee of the potential dangers lurking, together they could uncover the wider ramifications of the department's flaws. Just as the call connected, a flicker of doubt flickered in his mind. Was this the moment he plunged into a web of betrayal? "Jake, what's going on?" Lee's voice rang, steady yet curious. "Hey, Lee. I need to talk. It's about the last bust and some things I've noticed." Jake started, his words flowing as he built the case for their discussion, determination etched in his tone. As he spoke, his heart raced, knowing he was no longer just an observer. He was a participant in a huge game, one that could cost him everything if he misplayed his hand. He had crossed a threshold, igniting a chain of events that would surely test the very foundation of his moral boundaries. Yet before Jake could warn Lee about the intricacies of the situation, Lee interjected, "Let's meet. I think I might know more than you realize." In that moment, the stakes escalated. Jake realized that while he was out to save Max, something far larger was unfolding, an intricate drama layered in deceit that threatened everything he held dear. This next conversation could be the key to unraveling a menace that stalked not just their department, but their lives as well. But for every revelation comes a price, and Jake couldn't yet foresee the sacrifices that lay ahead, steeped in fear and unforeseen challenges. The real test was on the horizon, poised to challenge every value he'd built his career on. As Jake's heart thundered, he prepared to confront the brutal reality that lay beneath the surface, knowing it might demand a reckoning he wasn't ready for. But perhaps absolutely needed. Jake leaned back in his chair, a mix of fear and determination surging through him as he pressed his phone against his ear, still digesting Lee's unexpected invitation to meet. The precinct around him pulsated with routine, but he felt detached, as if a barrier separated him from the bustling energy of his colleagues. This was more than just a conversation. It was the juncture where safety and risk intersected. After ending the call, he stared at his laptop, though the files had transformed into a jumbled assortment of letters and numbers. Instead, thoughts of Lee's reputation filled his mind. No nonsense, ethical, a veteran in a game riddled with moral ambiguities. If there was anyone who could help him navigate this storm, it was Lee. Yet even that assurance was met with shadows of doubt. Could he truly trust anyone in this labyrinth of lies? He closed the laptop, feeling a thrill of anxiety igniting his legs. Lee would meet him at the cafe down the street within the hour. Jake's instinct was to prepare meticulously, to anticipate every possible angle of their discussion, yet he found that the subtle nervousness gnawing at his resolve tightened his focus towards the fundamental truth. He craved clarity. As he gathered his things, he reminded himself of Max, a life entwined within the web they were seeking to unravel. No matter the risk, he had to stand up for what was right. With each step towards the cafe, he replayed the snippets of the previous bust in his mind, the glaring inconsistencies in reports, the hushed whispers among officers. Was the camaraderie within the precinct a facade, masking deeper corruption? The echoes of uncertainty arose with every thought, yet one certainty rang clear. If Lee possessed vital information, it might just expose the darkness lurking nearby. The cafe was abuzz with life, a stark contrast to the gravity of his mission. Jake's palms were clammy as he entered, scanning the room for Lee. His seasoned eyes caught sight of the familiar figure seated in a corner booth. Lee appeared calm, but Jake noticed the subtle tension in his posture as he waved him over. "Glad you made it," Lee said, his voice steady. Jake slid into the seat opposite him, words caught at the back of his throat. He wanted to ask so many things, yet he was acutely aware that their conversation could veer into dangerous territories. What did you mean when you said you might know more than I realize? Lee took a breath, his expression shifting into seriousness. I've been aware of some things, unusual transfers, shadowy dealings. It's been troubling me, and I think it links back to our last bust. You're not alone in your concerns, Jake. Other officers have been murmuring. Trust me, it's worse than you think. Jake felt the weight of Lee's words settle heavily on his chest. Do you think they're involved in something illegal? What's happening is more than just poor judgment. It veers into treachery. There are officers who are playing both sides, colluding with individuals we've arrested. It's a betrayal that runs deep, and it's endangering lives, including Max's. The revelation rocked Jake to his core, the exposure to this level of deceit churning his stomach with dread. Despite the gravity of their discussion, a rush of reckoning surged through him. This was the catalyst he needed. It was no longer about surviving the inquiry. It was about confronting the evil head-on. So what's our next move? Jake asked, the determination in his voice accentuated by the burgeoning sense of purpose. Lee leaned closer, lowering his voice. We need proof, hard evidence. I have a contact who might be able to dig deeper into the records, but we have to work carefully. If the wrong people find out we're onto them, it won't just be our careers on the line. Let's do it, Jake replied, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Just as the conversation deepened, a commotion erupted outside the cafe. Through the window, Jake caught a glimpse of a chaotic scene. Officers rushing towards a vehicle, shouting as sirens echoed in the air. His heart sank. Something urgent was happening. Jake, focus, Lee snapped, pulling him back. But the distraction lingered, and with his instinct sharpening, Jake felt the reality of their new mission pressing upon him. Each choice could spiral beyond the bounds of their current comprehension, and the risk would be monumental. As their discussion faded into the background cacophony, one thought stood clear. Embarking on this path could demand everything he had. The cafe, once merely a backdrop, now felt like a precarious precipice into the unknown, where resolve and treachery danced perilously close. The weight of the decision loomed, pushing Jake toward a precipice he hadn't anticipated. But every heartbeat nudged him closer to a confrontation, one that would challenge his morals in unimaginable ways. What awaited him next could either illuminate the truth or shatter his very foundation. As Jake prepared to step into danger, he couldn't shake the nagging thought. Was he prepared to lose everything for the sake of justice? The air inside the cafe thrummed with the urgency of their conversation. Jake leaned forward, his mind racing with possibilities. Each passing moment felt heavier against the backdrop of the escalating situation outside. He needed to concentrate, to sift through the chaos for the clarity he desired. What's the next step? First, we gather intel without raising suspicion, Lee replied, his voice low, eyes scanning the room. We can't go in blind. I'll reach out to my contact tonight. In the meantime, we need to act like nothing is happening. Jake nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. He understood the necessity of playing the game. The line was fine between vigilance and paranoia. Just then, the sounds from the street shifted, the growing noise of a commotion signaling something serious, something that could lead to a slip in their fledgling alliance. I want to have eyes on our precinct, start gathering information quietly, Jake proposed, the idea forming rapidly. I can work late and monitor the logs, the communications. Lee considered this, nodding slowly. That's a smart angle. But you need to be careful. Don't alert anyone. If people catch wind that you're probing, it could backfire. As Lee spoke, a small spark ignited within Jake. He recalled the time he'd hacked into traffic cameras as a college student, a skill he'd brushed aside in the drive to fit in with the system. If he could access surveillance footage, it might uncover moments, incriminating evidence that could expose the officers embroiled in the web of corruption. I think I can explore the digital archives at work. There could be something there, Jake suggested, and he could feel the thrill of a plan taking shape. Just watch your back, Lee warned. And Jake nodded, a nervous rush fluttering in his stomach. The duality of his situation pressed upon him. He was about to breach the trust of those he had considered allies. But saving Max demanded that he put aside his apprehensions. In that fleeting moment, Jake felt an unveiling of purpose, plunging into the depth of his capabilities. A tide of resolve washed over him as he recognized that this was more than uncovering corruption. It was about rediscovering who he was amidst the chaos. Could he bring justice without losing himself? Just as the return of his adrenaline sharpened his focus, Lee's phone vibrated on the table, a hard reminder of time ticking away. "We need to wrap this up. Meet me to share findings as soon as you have something," Lee urged. Jake pocketed his own phone, brimming with determination. "I will be careful, Lee. I'm not backing down." As he stood to leave, the weight of the world pressed upon his shoulders, yet he felt lighter somehow. Engaging in this fight stirred a sense of belonging he'd lost amidst the bureaucracy. As Jake exited the cafe, he was bombarded by the sounds of the street once more. The uproar grew louder, a palpable crescendo, and with each purposeful step he took towards the precinct, the fractures in his world began to knit together into a tapestry of purpose and clarity. Arriving at the precinct, Jake could feel the undercurrents of a storm brewing. Officers drifted into whispers as he navigated the familiar space. He spotted a few who appeared uneasy, shifting glances that spoke of untrust. It was the first clear sign that cracks were appearing in their realities. "Jake, you're late. What happened with those reports?" His partner Alex called out, an edge cutting through the jovial banter typically present in their interactions. "Just busy crunching the numbers, nothing major," Jake replied, keeping his tone casual, his heart pounding as the lie slipped through his lips. Yet that simple act of complicity somehow fortified him. As he settled into his seat, the log files sprawled open before him. The fluorescent lights hummed, drowning out distractions, tethering him firmly in place. But those nagging thoughts of loyalty conflicted with the pursuit of justice. What surprised him was not just the tension he felt for Max's safety, but an underlying annoyance, an anger that grew with every flicker of doubt. He had not just chosen to fight for someone else's integrity, he was fighting for his. And amidst this fever to expose the truth, his resolve hardened into a shield. Tonight, he would scour through the data. But unbeknownst to him, with every piece of evidence he dug up, every surveillance image he scanned, shadows continued to loom closer. Betrayal lurked beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of vulnerability to strike. As he began to type furiously, a rush of adrenaline coursing through him, one resonating thought emerged. The path he was on might reveal more than he had anticipated. The stakes were rising, and with them, the dangerous game he was now in. Jake's heart raced with trepidation as he wondered how deep the corruption ran. Would the truth free him, or consume him entirely? It was this nagging dread of uncovering not just a betrayal of trust, but of himself that simmered below. What awaited him next on this treacherous path could reshape everything he knew about loyalty and betrayal. With one eye on the door, Jake whispered to himself, "What if this leads me to confront not just the enemy, but the darkness within?" Jake's fingers flew across the keyboard, a flurry of keystrokes echoing the chaos brewing in his mind. The files were sprawling, intricately tangled like the fate of Max and the truths he needed to unearth. He focused on the digital archives, searching for anything that could break the surface tension of suspicion surrounding the precinct. Each new entry he accessed seeped deeper into the reality he was grappling with. With scrupulous attention to detail, he worked to peel back layers of deception. Moments shifted into hours, urgency gripping at his throat as the night stretched on. The glow of the computer screen cast sharp shadows across his face, illuminating the conflict churning within him. The sweet allure of confirmation that he could expose the corruption clashed violently with the fear of what he might uncover. He was stepping into a territory where a single misstep could lead to professional exile or worse, personal ruin. "Just one more lead," he muttered under his breath, pushing deeper into the digital labyrinth. The detective within him was becoming consumed by a potent mixture of determination and dread. Each file he examined further entangled him in a web of loyalty and disloyalty. Each click of the mouse reverberated with the sound of choices yet to be made. Finally, he stumbled across an encrypted file labeled Internal Affairs, Review. His heart dropped. If he could sift through this obscure data, It could unveil not only Max's situation but potentially implicate officers in actions that violated their very oaths. The specter of betrayal loomed large in the corners of his thoughts, whispering doubts as he weighed consequences. How had he gotten to this point? Using skills he had long buried deep beneath the mundane rhythm of regular police work, he was now skirting the edges of legality, driven by more than just his duty. With every keystroke, he was not just pursuing justice. He was stepping into his own identity, confronting the parts of himself he had suppressed for the sake of conformity. His breathing accelerated as he entered the decryption command. The screen flickered for a brief moment before populating, revealing files that contained damning evidence and names of people he had trusted. A sense of vindication clawed at him, but it was accompanied by a sickening twist in his stomach. It was a threshold of revelation that could not be undone. Once he pursued this path, there was no return. He leaned back, eyes drifting towards the precinct's door, the fear of exposure weighing heavily on his chest. Would his colleagues believe he had good intentions? Would they honestly see him as a defender of truth, or would they view him as a traitor? Questions swirled, but he couldn't let them paralyze him. With a roar of tenacity, Jake resolved to keep going. He had to share this information with Lee, to gather their strategy to navigate the storm ahead. The situation was worsening by the second, perhaps too far gone for one individual to turn back now. He prepared to transfer the files to a secure drive, when a muffled voice came from outside his cubicle. "Jake, you got a minute?" Alex stepped in, eyes narrowed with a mix of concern and curiosity. Panic coursed through him. He was precariously teetering on a ledge. Had Alex noticed the intensity of his work, or was it something else? The tension in his shoulders tightened as he faced his partner, realizing that this was the moment where everything might change. "Yeah, just a second." Jake attempted to sound nonchalant, but the cracking veneer of his calm betrayed the escalating storm within. He turned back to the screen, fingers hovering over the mouse, poised to either finish the transfer or obliterate his chances of sharing what he had uncovered. The stakes were rising, and he felt the weight of shadows closing in. Secrets were not meant to be shared lightly, especially in a world where trust was as fleeting as the threads of camaraderie among officers. Jake glanced back at Alex, who was now leaning against the doorframe, an unreadable expression settling upon his features. Could today be the day he chose to confront not only the deception in his precinct, but the growing turmoil inside himself? As his resolve fluttered between loyalty and truth, he braced himself for the inevitable. "Jake, what's going on?" Alex pressed, a hint of urgency underlying his words. "Just some stuff I'm working on," Jake replied, every syllable dripping with conflict, propelled by the need to confront the truth, even as his instincts screamed for hesitation. The silence hung thick between them, and with it came the realization. The moment to act had come, but the cost could be far greater than he ever imagined. What path would he choose to walk? In the depths of night, where shadows lurked, Jake prepared to lay bare not just the crimes surrounding Max, but the much more precarious war that raged within his own heart. Time stretched as Jake and Alex stood locked in a tense stalemate, the weight of unspoken truths pressing heavily against them. The file on the screen seemed to pulse with its own life, a maddening siren song, coaxing Jake to reveal its secrets. Yet, every moment that passed deepened the chasm of uncertainty looming between his professional integrity and personal beliefs. "Jake," Alex urged, his voice laced with concern. "You can trust me. What are you really working on?" Jake's heart raced, the inner conflict intensifying. It struck him that betrayal wasn't merely a risk to his career. It had the potential to slice through the fabric of their partnership, the trusted bond that had developed over years on the force. But in the silence of his hesitation, that same trust felt like quicksand, slowly sinking him into a mire of complicity. He exhaled sharply, the weight on his chest threatening to crush him. What if revealing the truth meant losing Alex's friendship? What if he misjudged his partner? But wasn't this the evolution he sought? A transformation ignited from the ash of doubt. This was the moment to either step forward or retreat, slipping back into comfortable oblivion. "All right, Alex." The words tumbled out, almost a whisper, but they shook his core. "I've found information about the precinct. It's worse than I thought." Jake pointed at the screen, dread pooling in his gut as Alex's brow furrowed with increasing gravity. Alex stepped closer, glancing at the evidence sprawled across the monitor. Names, dates, and veiled insinuations all screaming the same bitter truth. The tension shifted, morphing into a shared urgency. "This is big, Jake," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "What's your plan?" The question sent ripples of panic through him. A plan? He had envisioned exposing the truth, but now everything felt overwhelmingly vast and chaotic. He recalled the aid he sought from Lee, a partner in this inevitable confrontation against the rot festering within their precinct. But divulging this information meant stepping into a space where danger and deceit danced together in a treacherous waltz. "I want to take this to Lee," Jake finally said, the conviction in his voice surprising him. "I think I can trust him. He'll know how to expose it, and protect us while doing it." A flicker of something akin to pride crossed Alex's face, but it was quickly replaced by a flicker of anxiety. "If we do this, there's no going back. You know that, right? They might come for you, might even tie me into this if they don't like what we find. Are you ready for that?" A chill shot through Jake's spine. The path ahead wasn't just uncertain, it was fraught with imminent danger. But every brush with corruption had only highlighted a raw, pulsing need within him to be a catalyst for change, to turn the tide. The thrill of risking everything ignited something powerful inside him. "I've never been more ready," he asserted with newfound resolve, igniting a flame beneath the layers of uncertainty. The stakes were higher than ever, spinning a web of consequences that tangled more deeply with each move they plotted. As if sensing his determination, Alex seemed to relax slightly, though shadows of worry lingered in his eyes. "Okay. Then we need to work fast. I can help gather proof, but we need to do it discreetly. Once they catch wind—" "I know," Jake interrupted, the solemnity of their task making his words sharp. "We'll have to move like ghosts." With every passing moment, the gravity of their mission weighed heavily upon him. The night was still ripe with secrets, but Jake was no longer merely observing from the edges. He was stepping into the fray, ready to fight not just for Max's life, but for his own moral renaissance. As they huddled over the screen, plotting their course, Jake's phone buzzed violently on his desk, the unexpected sound jarring them from their purpose. The caller ID read, Lee. For the second time that night, a deep-seated tension wriggled within him. What if this was the moment their plans shifted once again, sparking a confrontation that would change everything? Taking a breath to steady himself, he answered, "Lee, it's me. We need to talk." But what they discussed next would be the catalyst for Jake's battle against not only external corruption, but the internal crises that gnawed at his loyalty. He braced himself for the unfolding storm. The time had come to face the consequences of the path he had chosen. What lies ahead could irrevocably alter the course of his life and career. Jake held the phone to his ear as Lee's familiar voice crackled through, the words mingling with the clamoring thoughts in his mind. "Jake, what's going on? You sounded urgent." He hesitated, weighing each word carefully as if they bore the weight of a bomb. "I've found something," he said, his voice low. "Something dangerous. It's about the precinct, Lee. There's corruption right under our noses." Silence stretched on the other end, and Jake imagined Lee processing the gravity of his confession. The moments felt sprawling and heavy, their significance crystallizing. Jake had always respected Lee, viewing him as a steady force, a mentor even. His response could either lend him credibility or usher in peril. "Corruption?" Lee finally responded, his tone cautious, layered with disbelief. "What are you talking about? Do you have proof?" Jake's heart thudded in his chest. He took a deep breath, channeling the determination he felt earlier with Alex. "I have documents, names, dates. Everything points to a deeper rot. Some of our team is involved." He could almost see Lee running through possibilities, Not just for the case, but for Jake himself. You should come in and talk about this face to face. This is bigger than you think. But Jake felt a surge of urgency. A meeting could put them in the crosshairs of whoever was pulling the strings. No, Lee, he said sharply. If they catch on, it's over for all of us. We need a plan, a way to expose it that doesn't put us in the line of fire. All right, Lee acquiesced after a moment, his voice steadying. What do you propose? Jake's mind raced, a torrent of ideas colliding with one another. We need to document everything. We can put it all together, create a timeline. I can approach a few trusted sources without drawing too much attention. Lee's silence indicated he was considering its merits. You know this isn't just about us. If we go through with this, we risk everything. A spark of defiance ignited within Jake. I am willing to risk it, Lee. I have to know that I've done everything I can to fix this. I can't look the other way anymore. As they discussed the skeleton of their plan, gathering evidence, identifying allies, and mapping out potential risks, a realization struck Jake with undeniable clarity. This was more than professional duty. It felt primal, a reckoning with his personal values that had been shaken to their core. He had been drowning in contradictions for too long. But if he was to orchestrate this revolt against the unspoken wrongs, there would be no room for hesitation. Any mistake could cost him dearly, not only his career, but the integrity he fought so hard to uphold. He could feel the resolve solidifying within him. Okay, Jake, Lee said, pulling him back into the moment. Let's meet tonight at Stinger's, away from prying eyes. I want to hear everything you've got. Jake exchanged a nod with Alex, who stood silently by his side, his own anxiety visibly morphing into commitment as they planned their next moves. This was it. The encapsulation of change hung palpably in the air. After ending the call, Jake looked at Alex, a pulse of anticipation rising between them like electricity. This is our chance. But as they prepared to delve deeper into their investigation, an unsettling thought gnawed at the back of Jake's mind. How were they going to navigate the twisting web of danger without getting ensnared in the very corruption they sought to erase? The stakes were climbing higher. Could they truly extract justice without becoming victims in the process? Jake's resolve was unwavering, yet he felt the undercurrents of impending chaos swirling closer, threatening to engulf them. As they entered the darkness of impending confrontation, one question echoed in his consciousness. Would he be able to keep his newfound purpose intact, even if it meant facing the demons he had always avoided? The night was just beginning, and with it came a weight he could no longer ignore. Jake Thompson emerged from the shadows of uncertainty, transformed by a relentless pursuit of truth. Sitting across from Lee in the bustling corner of Stinger's, he felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. The cavernous space thrummed with energy, yet it contrasted starkly against the silent storm brewing within him, a storm birthed from the depths of deceit he had unearthed. Across the table, Lee leaned in, rapt attention on Jake. All right, let's break this down. I want everything you found. We're going to expose it. It's time we take a stand. Jake cleared his throat, the collective weight of choices made leading him here culminating into a precise moment of action. I've compiled documents linking back to the drug bust and the contaminated substances. I suspect it's a larger cover-up involving several officers. We can't just sit back and let this happen, especially not with Max's health on the line. The gravity of his words lingered between them. Jake realized this was not merely about Max. This was about every officer who'd sworn an oath, every canine companion, and the community that deserved their protection. Their commitment to uncovering the truth felt charged, a mission that could shift the very foundation of their department. Lee's expression hardened, a mix of admiration and concern. We need to gather evidence without alerting anyone. If we're right, we're up against seasoned players who will do anything to protect their interests. They won't go down without a fight. I know, Jake replied, his voice steadying with resolve. That's why we need undercover contacts, people who've been in the system but are still on our side. I also want to delve into further security footage from the precinct. There might be discrepancies in the logs. He could feel the fire igniting within him, fueled by the drive not only to bring justice, but to reclaim his own autonomy amid the deception that had permeated his livelihood. "But we need a backup plan," Lee continued, the weight of their conversation pressing down heavier than before. "What happens if they catch wind of us? We need to ensure our safety first." With growing confidence, Jake nodded. "Let's lay low for now, gather intel, and forge discreet alliances. And I'll make sure to keep this under wraps from Alex until we're sure of what we're dealing with. I trust him. But if things go sideways—" He hesitated, the fear of betraying their bond countering his instincts. Yet, deep down, he recognized this wasn't just about loyalty to a partner. It was about loyalty to the mission at hand, a mission that guided him back to integrity. "Okay, let's get to work," Lee said decisively, the camaraderie reinforcing their collective determination. In the following weeks, the duo operated like phantoms, collecting information in shadowed corners of the precinct while masking their tensions with the rhythm of normalcy. Yet, amid the air of secrecy, Jake constantly reminded himself of the stakes involved. For him, this was not merely uncovering a scandal, it was about saving Max and addressing the broader implications entwined within deception. As they sifted through surveillance footage, an alarming pattern emerged. It wasn't just a few rogue officers at play. Their investigation revealed evidence of systemic corruption, a network that extended beyond the precinct into local connections. Each revelation deepened Jake's resolve, while the darkness of their work increasingly threatened his newfound aspirations. One night, while poring over surveillance footage from the precinct's parking lot, Jake's heart raced as he spotted an anomaly. A familiar vehicle at odd hours, making clandestine stops that hinted at misconduct far beyond what he anticipated. "Lee, look at this!" he exclaimed. The short bursts of fluttering adrenaline echoed through him. Lee leaned closer, studying the screen intently. "That's Sergeant Reynolds' car. If he's involved in this, it could shake the department to its core." The gravity of the discovery lingered like ice in the air. What could this mean for their own safety? Jake wrestled with the fear that clawed at his confidence. They had roused a monster, and it was far from over. "Focus, Jake," he told himself, desperation edging his thoughts. This was their chance to frame a narrative that could dismantle the corruption once and for all. They redoubled their efforts, each lead directing them closer to the heart of the deception that threatened everything they stood for. As they prepared to take their findings to an investigative board, apprehension loomed. It struck Jake suddenly. Every time he made headway, it felt like stepping into boiling water. Yet every isolated moment dissecting the intensity of his work invested him deeply in the pursuit of justice. Finally, the night came, an impromptu meeting where they would unveil the corruption, hoping to ignite accountability within the very department he pledged his life to protect. His heart raced as they entered the meeting room, electric with anticipation. The time for action arrived, and as the pieces fell together, his belief in the ability to reignite honor surged unwaveringly. "Are you ready?" Lee asked, assessing Jake's face, allowing him a moment before they stepped into the noise of confrontation. Jake took a breath, summoning every ounce of courage within him. "Let's do this." As they presented their findings, the tension in the room oscillated, with disbelief colliding against the undeniable evidence they laid bare. Jake felt revitalized, reveling in a transformative sense of purpose that surged through him. In the aftermath of their revelations, a cascade of repercussions rippled through the department. Those implicated began to unravel, and the facade of loyalty that had initially bound them together frayed. Jake's heart raced, not just from the tension surrounding justice but the validation of every trial endured, the culmination of risking everything for the sake of integrity. Weeks later, as he strode confidently through his precinct, he bore the weight of resolute pride. The change they incited resonated throughout the department, no longer veiled in secrecy. Each interaction with his colleagues felt renewed, built on the foundation of shared accountability. And amidst it all, Jake knew that Max was safe, the loyalty between them stronger than ever before. He had confronted not just the failure within systems, but also embraced the evolution of his own identity, redefining his role as both protector and seeker of truth. "I finally found my place," Jake smiled, content in the knowledge that he had proven himself capable of achieving transformation amidst turmoil, guiding others toward integrity. As he left the precinct that evening, the weight of responsibility transformed into a lightness of spirit, a journey completed and a new chapter unfolding ahead, brimming with promise and purpose born from genuine courage. Now ask yourself, would you stand up when everything hangs in the balance? Will you embrace your own journey of truth? Make that leap. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and spread these powerful narratives. Comment your thoughts on Jake's courageous choices and share with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusive moment of growth and integrity. Don't wait even one more second to support real transformational stories. Your voice matters here.